Whether you lease or purchase space for your company, it represents a major financial investment. If you want to know what's happening in commercial real estate, stay with us. I'm Lisa Smith, and this is Focus on Business. Kyle, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
We're considering a lot of things about real estate. Where do we go? We're thinking about lease, buy, taxes, square foot, age of the building. What are some other things that we want to consider?
First things you want to consider are the utilities. Are the utilities adequate enough for the business you would want to put in that building? If you're wanting to put in a brewery, make sure there's enough water there. If you're doing manufacturing, make sure that the grid can hold the load that you're bringing in. The other thing is, does the building own the utilities outside the building? So the transformers and things like that, that can have significant impacts on maintenance and replacements, because if the building owns those, the utility is not responsible for fixing them.
How would you go about knowing about utilities? You don't just walk in and look at a panel somewhere. You do other things, I presume?
Right. You'd either talk with the building owner itself or the utility itself. The major utilities in the state can certainly tell you if it's a primary customer or a secondary customer, meaning whether the building owns it or if they own it, as well as the utility bills from the previous 6 to 12 months can give you a good indication of what that is.
So should you be measuring where you're at currently and then looking at what the potential is for the next building?
That's a start, but as the building gets larger, usually the utility bills get larger. So one thing to look at is energy use intensity, and that measures the energy use per square foot. And that'll be able to give you the opportunity to compare apples to apples when looking at utility bills.
This is great information. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Here with me today is Craig Wieland, Rick Labor, and Brooke Hall. Gentlemen, let's set the stage with the great state of Michigan. How has Michigan fared economically over the last 4 to 9 years?
Well, I would say it's done pretty well. When we look back at 2000 to 2010, we had a little bit of a hole to dig out of. And so we keep that in mind in terms of how we look at some of these measures. But in the last 4 to 9 years, very well. Let me quote just a few overall economic statistics. One is the State Business Climate Index. And over the last 4 years, Michigan is ranked 12th to 13th in the nation, pretty good. In terms of Corporate Tax Index, 12th or 11th nationally over the last 4 years. And then percentage change in employment, we've been near the national average for 9 years in terms of a positive increase in employment. Percentage change in unemployment rate, so the unemployment rate going down, we've performed better than the national average over the last 9 years. In terms of GDP growth, which is a measure of gross domestic product, we've ranked 4th nationally as of the most reading. So that's really good. And then in terms of wages and salaries, we've ranked 7th nationally in growth per capita income over the last 9 years. So looking at some of those economic indicators, I think we've done pretty well.
So this is good news for business.
Yeah, you know what? Here's real simple. We got an office in downtown Raleigh. If I sit in my office downtown Raleigh, I look around, I find 14 sky cranes. When I drive down Michigan Avenue in Lansing, I got 7. Raleigh's 3 times Lansing size. You think about that. You used to go a whole year and not see a sky crane in Lansing. Now you got 7 of them. If you had Grand Rapids and Detroit, you probably got one of the most dynamic economies in the country, literally in the country. So now, if you get north of here, all the way up to Marquette, maybe not so much. Okay, I agree with that. But you take a 96 corridor, I don't think anybody in the country really is going to top us. It's that good. It's that good.
Yeah, and working with small businesses, I'm seeing people who are very profitable in this time. And I question those companies that aren't profitable right now. So.
Yeah, so that brings us to office space. Real estate, commercial real estate. That is an entirely new conversation because good economy, bad economy, office space is very individual decisions.
Yeah, you know what? It can be an advantage for you, but it can also be a huge disadvantage. I will tell you, in East Lansing, during the recession, you could have bought brand new Class A office space for $40 a foot. That was probably built for $120. So the guy that bought it for 40, good for him, right? The guy that's buying it now for 150 to 160, better hope that 10 years from now it's higher. You can't guarantee that. Sometimes, in office space is a good one, it takes some huge swings. If you have a tenant, it's very, very valuable. If you don't have a tenant, it's not an asset, it's a liability. So
take you out.
it's still, yeah, it's a dynamic equation. It doesn't fit the same all the time.
I would say that from a lease versus buy perspective, it's a very individual decision. It's a business decision. Different businesses have different objectives and might come to a different conclusion. One of the ways to do it is just to do a net present value of the cash flows under one option or the other and compare the two and dispassionately pick the one. That might not meet all of your objectives. Typically break even is around 7 years, give or take. But I think it depends on what you want in terms of your business. Do you think that you might move in a few years? And so do you want the option of being able to terminate your lease or end at the end of your lease? Will you have trouble with putting up a down payment for a purchase and getting financing to pay for and construct or build a currently constructed building? Do you mind doing your own maintenance, or would you rather have the landlord do the maintenance? So these are things to think about in terms of what your objectives are, the type of business you have, and how long you think you might be in that space.
You know, we've also looked at it. If your building is a tool for your business, own it.
Right.
If it's not a tool for your business, lease it. If you think about that.
Like an industrial space, perhaps.
Exactly.
Might be a
Exactly.
tool for your business, you'd want to lease it.
You agree?
I completely agree, yeah. The other thing that I like to think about is how is your business growing? Are you going to outgrow that space? And is that going to hit that 7-year mark? It's something you want to potentially be in a lease so that you can move or relocate.
Yeah. And you know what, with leasing now, you talked about long-term leases and a 7-year return. You know what, if you're getting 2% on a CD and you're getting 15% on owning, then own. Okay, I mean, there are some really good reasons to own, and then you have the inflation. But don't get caught in a trap where you own something that you thought was worth X, and now because you have to sell your business, somebody gives you much less than that because they got to own your real estate too. That's really kind of the long and the short of it. Yeah.
It's quick that we forget about the late 2000s as well, and the real estate market there.
You know how you can tell when the next recession's coming along? If the contractors are buying new pickups. I'll tell you, if contractors are buying new pickups, we're going into the hole. And we're getting close to that. No, I'm just kidding. But you're right. People forget back in 2009, you couldn't give your real estate away. So not predicting that again, but got to remember that.
That word dispassionate, that's such an important word. Don't fall in love with space. Think about it. Think about the black and white. Think about the numbers. Weigh it. You know, that's the real benefit to people who are trying to get you into some spaces when you fall in love with something. Owning one unit for your company is a conversation, but if you own something that accommodates your company and another company, you know, that's akin to having that duplex.
Sure. But you got to understand, real estate developers stay awake at night trying to figure out how to put together deals. You, as an independent businessman, an accountant, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever, you probably don't have that insight. You don't know. And so these guys are trying to figure it out. You're not going to stumble into a deal. Okay? I had a manufacturer one time, fairly famous manufacturer here in town, who called me up one day. He was the owner of the company. He said, I think I'm going to buy this office building. And I said, you don't own office buildings. You're a manufacturer. He said, oh, I know. I said, okay, tell me why you're going to buy it, but you can't use the word cheap. He was like, I said, you're right. It's cheap, right? He said, yeah. I said, it's cheap for a reason. I said, none of the professionals are buying it. Why do you think that is? Well, I said, you think you know more than they do? The answer is no. There was no market. There were no tenants. He was going to buy something cheap and sit on it for a long, long time. And so you do get guys who on the outside go, oh, I can see a deal here. If the inside guys can't see that deal, there might not be a deal.
And if you're finding space that's unique to your business and it happens to be a little bit larger than what you're currently going to occupy, you might have that benefit of being able to bring in some cash flows by leasing that out to a third party, and still hold some ability to then fill that space later. But I think going into it, you've got to be careful and weigh those options pretty carefully.
Yeah, no, true.
Leasing has served us well. When we started out 26 years ago, we had one employee leasing the basement of a house. And so that's how it started. And then some years later, probably about 20 years ago, so 5 or 6 years in, we moved to a building that was multi-tenant, and we were one of the tenants in the space. Over the next 10 years, we grew to the point where we occupied the entire building as other tenants' leases expired and they moved out. And then we outgrew that building, and now we're into another building that's significantly larger than the last. And when we got into it, we didn't lease the whole building because we didn't think we needed it all. We're already leased up for the whole building. And if we thought we were smart enough to know how big we would grow and buy that building, we would end up with staff in one location and staff in another location, and that wouldn't be as efficient for us.
No, that's interesting. You say you grew and grew and grew and you leased the entire time. I think more businesses should look at that. I think they say, you know what, let's just say our return on investment is 20% per year in our business. Well, then don't buy real estate. Put money in your business, right? And lease your real estate. Now, if your returns are 7 or 6 or 5, maybe you want to have some real estate. But I see people taking money that they could have made 20% on, buying brick and mortar, and now it's sitting there, and now they have less money to grow their company. That's not wise.
That's a true opportunity cost that
Absolutely.
could hinder the business.
Yeah, that's why you need a good accountant.
Yeah,
Tell them that.
that's what we're here for.
But there are some benefits to owning.
Tell me what they are.
Well,
I'm interviewing the interviewer now.
and I don't own. So yeah, I lease. So, so I think.
Yeah, I could tell you from an ownership perspective, I think the benefits can definitely outweigh leasing in certain situations. When you look at appreciation of a building, you potentially have the opportunity to grow an investment. You've also got some great tax benefits that are out there. There were some laws passed within the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act back in 2017 that would support an operating business that owns real estate, basically providing a 20% deduction for qualified business income. I won't go into the details, but there are some definite benefits from that perspective. In addition to that, the benefits that you can get from depreciating the cost of the building can help to provide a future tax benefit and future cash flow stream that might outweigh some of the benefits of leasing as well.
I would add one more point to that. I agree with all those points, Brooke, great points. One is it's really your space to organize. And you don't have a landlord to deal with saying, well, there are these limitations and those limitations. You can do anything you want with your space to organize it and build it out or modify it to meet your needs.
Yeah.
That flexibility can be important depending on your business.
And if you're looking for millennials, if you're looking for a younger generation that's going to want amenities in that building that a landlord is not really going to want to finance, then you probably need to do that yourself. And so you're exactly right. If you drive down the road and you see a very, very unique building that's associated with a business, then that's a marketing tool that business can use. If you have a business that says, oh, they're creative, they're cutting edge, it's great, but they're in an office building on the 10th floor with everybody else, you kind of go, I'm not so sure about that, right? So today we're trying to attract employees, workers. We all need them. Everybody needs them. One of the key criteria when they walk in is your building. You know, do you got a ping pong table? All right, do you got a workout area? We have
Craft beer on tap.
No, we do have fresh beer on tap. In our Shreveport office, you go in, there's 4 taps of the local brewery. Now, we encourage Friday night after 5. I'm not so sure people don't pull that a little early, but here in Lansing, we have 5 bikes outside our front door, and you grab those and you go. If I'm in lease space with 5 other companies, I'm not putting 5 bikes outside my front door, right? But our employees grab them, they go for rides on their lunch breaks or before and after work. Those are tools that you can use to enhance your business that if you own the building, you can do it. If you lease it, you can't do it. So some real benefits there. I think there's some real benefits. And I'm a builder too. I like building things, so I think people should.
Build stuff. Come
Build
on, let's
stuff.
build stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Craig,
but-
you can still build stuff. You'll build
Yeah.
stuff for other people to be the landlord
Well-
and lease out to everybody
No,
else.
but my point is landlords don't want to own that stuff. They want four walls and a roof. And if you want
Yes.
some really crazy things in your building to attract tenants, you're probably going to need to do that yourself. Yeah.
So another benefit that is opportunity zones.
Sure.
They're hot right now. Opportunity zones are extremely hot. It's kind of the coined phrase that a lot of real estate folks are talking about. Essentially, you've got some great tax deferral benefits, which essentially, if taxpayers have capital gains right now, they can defer the payment of that tax for 7 years. And in addition to that, there are some cost basis adjustments, as well as the opportunity to essentially forego any future taxes on that investment if the investment's held long enough. There are some tremendous rules and regulations around that, but for the right business owner, it could be a great investment. And I look at it personally, if there are business owners that are looking to build right now and they've got and fit into a certain category, this would be a great time to find space inside of an opportunity zone and build and construct from there to be able to take advantage of the benefits.
As a general rule, this is nationally, I suspect it applies to Michigan as well. There are about 288 opportunity zones in Michigan. And when you look at those, you could probably divide them up into three buckets. One is where investment's probably going to happen anyway. There's a bucket at the other end of the extreme where investment's probably not going to happen.
That's what I was referring to.
That's what Craig's talking about.
Yeah.
And then there's this group in the middle that maybe is nearing a tipping point where some investment that came in could really be catalytic to additional investment to that community. And I think that's the part that's the most interesting, that middle third that has some opportunity that hasn't been completely recognized or partially, and we can drive more economic development to that area.
Mm-hmm. There's no question the government has a lot to say with development. I mean, where we're sitting right now within 5 blocks of here, 30 years ago, you would not come down here at night. City of Lansing came in, they knocked down those buildings, they built a stadium, next thing, stadium district. After that, it just exploded. My guess is if they wouldn't have done that 30 years ago, probably nobody would still come down here at night. But it's so they can be a useful tool, but sometimes they try to shove development in areas where maybe socially it isn't supposed to go yet.
I think social and cultural things have shifted as well. We know now that density is important in downtowns. We know now there has to be fresh foods and restaurants, not just police. Right. There has to be amenities, and those kinds of amenities, I think that city planners and politicians have figured out that those are important things and are starting to, or haven't started to 20 years ago, began making investments in that way. So I think there's opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, certainly in those urban centers.
Right across the street is the Radisson Hotel. It's to your point. You know, city came in, they said, hey, we need a hotel downtown. They helped finance it, but that was it. They financed it and they left. Well, nobody wanted to come here because they hadn't addressed those other issues.
Right. Yeah.
Where now you come down here and you go, wow, I feel safe here just because of what, you know, Pat Gillespie's doing down here and many, many, many other people.
It takes time.
Takes time.
It takes decades.
It's a difference between economic development and community development.
Mm-hmm.
And economic development is more of a top-down approach. You come in with a solution and you implement your solution, and it may go well and it may not. Where from a community development perspective, you engage the community, you find out what they think they're missing, what they would like to need, and then you do that economic development after engaging the community. And I think that's really a key.
It's a holistic approach because the same thing would have happened in downtown Flint and Saginaw or Pontiac that happened here without the same results. So you look at what's happened here, it's more of a community thing that happened. And in those, it was right. We came down, they put a hotel downtown, they left, and nothing ever happened with the rest of the community just because you got to have the other things. Not just police, but you got to have some place where people say, I choose to live there. That's pretty hard. That's pretty hard to remake these cities, but it's happening.
It's happening.
Oh my.
We used to say it was impossible, and we're seeing it all over. We're certainly all over Michigan, even small towns. The community development block grants from 10, 15 years ago that I'm seeing in little pockets around Michigan have really spurred opportunity for businesses to come. Craig, You leased a long time.
Yeah, 35 years.
Now you have one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen or
Yeah.
been in.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that? What did that do for your company?
Oh, it's unbelievable because our client base is really diverse from high-end residential all the way to warehouses. So what we did is we made this a tool. When you walk in the lobby, you see a lot of granite, black granite. It looks really, really high-end, but you look up and all the bar joists are exposed, all the heating is exposed. And when people come in, now we have the credibility. Where before, where we were leasing space in a big office building, you really had to fight to say, no, we're credible, we're different, we're exciting. And but it was so nice for us to not have to put any money down and do it. But now we use that building as a tool, and the first thing we ask clients is, can you come to our office? Yeah, and then once they come in, they're like, wow, can you build us one like this?
It's nice to end on a high, isn't it? Thank you so much for being here
Thank
today.
you.
We appreciate your time.
Great.
Jeff, when we're looking for real estate, what should we be considering?
Okay, from a technology perspective, it's often overlooked in my experience. So business owners are looking for a new place to live, to put their business. Whether they're looking for location, they're looking for the market area that they're gonna, whether it's gonna appreciate or not. They're looking for the quality of the building, the roof, the interior, what types of things need to happen in there. Then they make a deal and they move in, and then they have to get up and running. So one of the calls they make is to the internet service provider, and they find out that there is no high-speed internet at that location. Okay, so what I'm encouraging people to do is, as part of the evaluation process on any commercial real estate, is to consider, is there high-speed internet or is there adequate internet for what you want to do? There's pockets of it here and there. In congested areas even, there's still areas that don't have good quality internet. So think about that. The other thing is, if you're moving into a high congested area, like a high-rise or something in the downtown area, there's often Wi-Fi considerations. Okay, so let's say your organization requires or relies on good quality Wi-Fi within your building, and it's something that you have no control over because the people next door, the people up above, the people down below, the people down the street that have wireless access points, they're all trying to communicate in this very limited bandwidth. It's all radio waves, people don't see it. But we can go into a certain place in a congested area in a downtown and might find 150 or 180 access points that are trying to communicate. And when you have that type of a thing, it's not going to work very well.
Got it. It's a lot to think about.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Focus on Tech, brought to you by Providence, making technology easier.
Okay, so Matthew, thanks for being here. If a business is thinking about changing their position in office space with ownership, what do they need to talk to their banker about?
That's a great question. I think that one of the first things a client of ours, when they approach us, I ask them a rhetorical question. How will the new space help you create a better bottom line for the company? And how much space are you thinking will be needed to kind of create that space? And then thirdly, how fast will you utilize all that and need more? You know, think about this long-term idea about full facility utilization. Oftentimes people don't think about that because when they're thinking about owning a space, they want to get into that sort of next level without the idea of thinking about what could come after this if the success continues to follow them. So when we start having those conversations with our clients, we like them to think about not only the space size, but then what will the net revenue be from generating or from going into this next space. That becomes key because that will then be a direct driver to their ability to afford the space they're considering getting into. It's our job as their banker to make sure that they are not overspending their money so that they can continue to retain capital and grow their business, which is really at the core of what they need to do. The facility becomes secondary only in that it's needed to help promote them into that next level of whatever dream they're trying to fulfill next. So one of the things we try to counsel them on is cash flow, number one on the whole outline of what we're going to discuss with them. And that cash flow then leads us into what their maximum amount of money they can borrow. And then knowing what their maximum amount of money they can borrow then leads into how much cash down do they need, how much seller subordinate financing needs to come into play. But it gives you great guidance as to know how your structure will end so that you can decide if now at the beginning we're in a position where we can make that next step.
So let's say I've made the decision I want to own. What kind of cash am I going to have to bring to this total loan? What kind of percentage? What do you look at it in that way?
We do, and if you want to just do a very armchair quarterback approach to it, think about 20 to 25% down.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much.
You're very
Appreciate
welcome.
you.
Focus on Banking, brought to you by Michigan Bankers Association.
Denise, a lot of companies have the question from a legal perspective. Should I be leasing or should I be buying?
Right, so new business owners are going to want to lease probably because they're taking most of their capital and putting it into their business and not real estate. After a new business is now a thriving small business, business owners are going to be looking at purchasing, not only because it's another source of revenue, because they'd want to diversify a little bit, but maybe they're expanding and the lease just doesn't make sense anymore. So number one thing, if you're going to buy real estate, title search, okay? You want to make sure that you have clean title. And it's not hard to do, it's not expensive to do, an attorney can do it, a title company can do it, but that's the number one thing. And then environmental due diligence as well. But you just need to make sure that what you're buying has clean title so you don't have any challenges to your property rights.
So if I have found a building, say you want to occupy part of the building and then you want to lease out part of that building.
Right, great idea. The first thing you should never do is download a lease off of the internet. A lot of people think that all contracts are the same. Some leases are tenant friendly, some leases are landlord friendly. They're really very different. So you need to make sure that you have a qualified real estate attorney drafting a lease for you that's landlord friendly, that's going to protect you, because long-term financially, if you don't have a good lease, you can be looking at losing a lot of money. So it needs to protect you.
Excellent information once again. Thank you for being here today.
Focus on Law, brought to you by Policella and Associates, PLLC.
Well, it seems pretty clear. When it comes to office space, there is no single answer. You should make your decision based on your individual goals and circumstances. We'll see you next week.